Yay! You can always count on Judy for a yay! All right, welcome. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning. I'm Aileen Fuchs. I'm the President and Executive Director of the National Building Museum, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the museum this morning. We are so proud to serve as the host venue and for today's convening, and also to co-host Elevate 2025 alongside these amazing partners at the National Institute of Building Sciences and the International Code Council. It's so wonderful to have you gathered here in our beautiful, historic Great Hall for a day that just promises to be a powerful, powerful day of learning and dialogue and collaboration. I want to just take 2 minutes here to talk a little bit about the museum and why this matters so much. The National Building Museum, we are chartered by Congress. We inspire and educate the public about the built environment, and we provide a platform for dialogue on how we can work together to build a more sustainable and equitable and resilient future. We do this through exhibitions and programs and initiatives that foster learning, spark curiosity, and bring diverse voices together around issues that matter the most in shaping the world we design and build. That is our tagline. We also inspire the next generation of design and construction professionals through our renowned education programs and events and initiatives. And I just want to mention that we have one called the Big Build Festival, which is a hands-on, family-friendly event here at the museum that introduces people of all ages to careers in construction. And last year, thank you, yes, last year we welcomed over 4,000 visitors that day and kids that explore the trades firsthand and meet working professionals. This year it's on October 18th. Bring your kids, mark your calendar. It's really, really fun. And it's one of the ways that we inspire the next generation of builders and introduce young people to the trades. And I think today's event builds on that same commitment. We are honored to partner here to host a day of real dialogue, policy engagement, and idea sharing around one of the most urgent challenges facing our country, which we all know we're here for, the skilled workforce shortage in the construction and infrastructure sectors. This issue is not abstract. It's impacting timelines and budgets and communities and careers across the nation. It is deeply connected to the work we do here at the museum because at its core, the built environment is about people and their opportunities to live their best lives. Today's gathering is more than a conversation, it is a call to action. And throughout the day, industry leaders, policymakers, educators, labor unions, and trade organizations will come together to build a unified coalition dedicated to advancing critical policy solutions. Our shared goal is to strengthen the pipeline of skilled workers needed to build and maintain the infrastructure that supports our economy, our security, and our communities. One more plug here. Later this month, we'll open the first exhibition of our Future Cities initiative. It is called Coming Together, appropriately titled, we believe people need to come together, and it looks at the reinvention of American downtowns and the critical role the built environment and its workforce will play in shaping the next chapter of urban life. We have a special preview opening that we're opening for that on September 24th with the International Downtown Association. We will have 1,000 people here. We are so excited. Please come see me all day if you would like to come for that. And finally, today's event is really about that collaboration. It's about innovation, and it's about ensuring that the workers who build and maintain our infrastructure reflect the diversity, talent, and potential of our country, and that they have the skills and support to do their best work. The National Building Museum is so proud to be your host and proud to partner in this work. I want to, again, just thank so much the National Institute of Building Sciences and the International Code Council for your leadership. And thank you to all of you for committing your time and your expertise and your energy to this cause. And I think we're going to have a terrific, terrific day. And it is now my pleasure to introduce someone who's leading the effort in this in every single way and every day. Please join me in welcoming the President and CEO of the National Institute of Building Sciences, George Guszcza. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aileen. It's an honor to be here in the National Building Museum. It's a space that reminds us that when you think of American innovation, the foundation of American innovation is always building innovation. And the reason we're here in this building is because this building is a testament to the fact that anything that is built requires a dedicated workforce, requires the inspiration of architects. It requires people who understand how to engineer the feats that have allowed this nation to prosper. The National Institute of Building Sciences was founded 51 years ago by act of Congress We were asked to be the authoritative source of findings and recommendations for the built environment, for the public interest. Usually, we talk about means, methods, we talk about technology, we talk about material, because at our core, we are a bunch of well-intentioned nerds who love the built environment and love America and want things to be better for ourselves, our families, and future generations. We believe that building innovation is the foundation of American innovation, and we're here today because at the center of building innovation is people and workforce. And in discussions with our colleagues, what we're trying to highlight today is a growing issue, a growing gap, one that has risen to essentially be a national security issue. Brookings in 2022 commented that while there are 16.6 million people in the infrastructure trades, 17 million are going to be exiting in the next 10 years. Shouldn't be too much of an issue, right? Well, if you start looking at the fact that there is a gap of almost a 500,000 folks entering the workforce, that we are looking across all the trades and finding that in some of the trades, for every one person that enters, 4 people are leaving. Think about that. The Associated Builders and Contractors estimate that 500,000 additional new workers are needed this year in addition to normal hiring to fill any sort of gap. We look around and we see aging infrastructure. We look around and we see buildings that require a lot of help. We look around and what we see are increasing needs for workforce across the entirety of the built environment. And today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the technology, about AI. But remember, AI is just math. AI, with all its wonders, even when coupled with robotics and all the advances in research that are being brought to the table as we speak, require people. And those people require an entire nation to understand not only the need, but to incentivize their participation going forward. The Bureau of Labor Statistics report that there are historic lows in unemployment across the AEC industry, and yet 370 jobs remain unfilled in August alone. The Building Talent Foundation reported that 40% of the construction workforce is expected to retire by 2031. And I see a lot of folks out here in the audience who are representing many of the associations. When you speak to the association community, whether it's ASCE, whether it's IBEC, whether it's the many labor unions that support the workforce across the country, what you hear is a growing urgency around getting young people to join the workforce, to join the vast amount of folks who continue to be the underpinning for American innovation across the country. And yet, we're not seeing that participation. And so, we gathered here today and we're asking people to consider that when you look across the entirety of the built environment, the gap that is created has risen to the level of a national security issue and requires us as a country to look hard, to look deep, to make sure that we are doing what is necessary so that the next generations have the underpinnings, the built environment necessary to thrive, to be safeguarded against natural hazards, to make sure that they are able to move forward in a prosperous community. We're really excited to be here. We're excited to start this day with Punchbowl News. For those of you who don't know, a little trivia thing that I learned this morning, the Secret Service, who is around here, apparently their code name for Congress is Punchbowl. I didn't know that. little tidbit I wanted to pass on to you all, because we all have to continuously learn as we go through life. But I would really like to welcome Anna Palmer, the CEO and founder of Punchbowl News. She and her team offer insights into congressional leadership, legislative developments, with a focus on power, people, and politics here in Washington, D.C. It's fantastic to have her and her team here leading this important conversation and starting off what I hope will be a day filled with insights that will allow all of us to be inspired to make the workforce in America grow stronger generation by generation. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much, George, for the warm welcome. My name is Anna Palmer. I'm the CEO and one of the founders of Punchbowl News. We are thrilled to be in the Building Museum this morning for a pop-up conversation with Labor Secretary Lori Chavez-DeRemer. A big thank you to the National Institute of Building Sciences for their partnership and making conversations like this possible as part of Elevate 2025. I'm going to be talking to the Secretary about news of the day. There is no shortage of things happening here in Washington, as I'm sure all of you are aware. We're also going to talk about the built environment, workforce, some of the challenges that the industry is enduring, and what she's seeing from her perspective atop a key, department. Afterwards, I'm going to be joined by George. We're going to do a fireside chat talking about all the things that he was just talking about, going a little bit deeper in terms of what's happening in the industry, what some of the trends are, and where maybe some of the bright spots are. I always like to leave on a positive note. With that, I want to always remind you all that you can see Punchbowl News on all social media at Punchbowl News. We encourage you to share this conversation, and I'd love to welcome the Secretary to the stage. All right. Well, Secretary, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It is always busy here in Washington. We are going to start, as we always do at Punchbowl News, with a few... Hello? Oh, there we go. All right.
Good morning.
With a few news of the day questions, and there is no shortage of that. Punchbowl News, we cover Congress probably more than anybody. You're very well aware of that. Shutdown politics. I mean, this is what we're all focused on right now. Talk about what the impact of a shutdown would be for the Department of Labor.
Yeah, thanks for that, because it's among us again, the continuing resolution that my former colleagues will be addressing. They're back to work this last week. I think it's fly-out day, and they'll be back again next week. But this will be first and foremost, I'm sure, on every one of them as they represent their own districts across the country. And from the Department of Labor's perspective, I will be working with my colleagues so that they understand exactly what's happening on the ground. I know you're aware. From the Department of Labor's perspective, we want to make sure that every American who can be working is working, and that they have all the tools and resources they need to provide for their families. That's their biggest concern, is when there is a possible shutdown, what is that going to mean for their everyday lives? I'm a former mayor of Happy Valley, Oregon, and when these kind of things happen at the federal level, they impact the small communities across the country. I've been on a 50-state tour.
We're going to talk more about that in a little bit.
But the perspective that I get on the ground is they do want certainty. Americans want certainty that they're going to have their jobs every single day, and they rely on the federal government to get their job done. So I have ultimate confidence in Speaker Johnson. I have ultimate confidence in my colleagues in the House that they will get this done for the American people. We never want to shut down the government. That continuity matters, and it has happened before, and to get back on track costs even more money. So they understand that, and I'll be supporting them across the country to tell them those stories.
All right, the White House's nominee to lead the Bureau of Labor Statistics has encountered a lot of criticism. E.J. Antony, he's being criticized for participating or being outside part of the Capitol crowd on January 6th by conservative economists at the American Enterprise Institute, among others. Do you think he's fit for a job overseeing such critical economic data? Does it give you any concern or pause?
The fact that the president has the the latitude to pick who he chooses in these agencies. You know, the Bureau of Labor Statistics is independent of the Department of Labor. While we work very closely together because it's important to have transparency, to have real data that supports the workforce, and understanding that data has to be accurate. That's what the American people are asking for. When we see rescissions or we see numbers that can change so drastically, it gives you pause. And I will tell you, I have not spent any time with EJ, but as he makes his way through the process, as we all have, with criticism or without, and going through that confirmation process, you will come up against that. But that's something that he will work through. But I'm looking forward to working with him if he gets through this process, so that we can deliver those numbers, because they do affect the markets. That's what matters. Those numbers have to be real, they have to be accurate, and that's what the American people are expecting. And I would imagine that he will be fit for the job, or the president would not have asked him to take this position.
All right, one more news of the day question, then we're going to get to the built environment and what you're seeing in workforce, which is where I know you spend a lot of your day job. But the White House recently released an executive order last month ordering the Labor Department to reevaluate the guidelines that previously prevented 401k funds from investing in things like crypto, hedge funds. You know, there's been some proponents very excited about that opportunity, some saying, hey, maybe this is riskier investments. Is this really what should be happening? What's your response? How does DOL maintain its fiduciary standards to keep those retirement assets safe that so many Americans count on?
And that's one of the missions of the Department of Labor, to protect the retiree. Right. When we look at that as we comes through our benefits agency, when we addressed this as it's coming through either crypto, crypto's not new. I don't think I have to probably say that to many people here in this audience. And that has also been on the agenda for Congress, to have the regulatory framework and the policies around that. And then as it comes through the Department of Labor, my goal is, at the direction of the president, is to leave it up to the fiduciary and the people who are investing. It shouldn't be on the backs of the federal government to determine the winners and losers. That is exactly why the people get frustrated with any sort of government when we put our thumb on the scale. My job as the Secretary of Labor is not to put my thumb on the scale. We did roll back some Biden-era rules because we want modernization, we want streamlining, and we want to make sure that we're leaving that up to the fiduciaries to determine. And as we make our way through the regulatory framework, I would imagine we'll have a lot of input on exactly how that will come down.
All right, let's shift to the conversation of the day, workforce for the built environment. After you were named Secretary of Labor, you have been on an America at Work listening tour. Would love to hear challenges, opportunities that are facing the American workers. What's your biggest couple of takeaways?
Well, 32 states we have hit, and the 50, when I was appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate, the first thing I said to my team was, well, let's go to all 50 states and let's do it by the end of the year. And they said, do you want to do that by the end of this year or the end of your first year? It didn't make any sense to me to visit all 50 states at the end of 4 years. We're not going to get the information or the storytelling that we're going to hear from the American people. And the president asked all of the secretaries, including myself, to be on the ground. Get out of Washington, D.C., and go talk to the American people and talk to them about the promises that he made to them on the campaign trail. So, 32 states we have visited. We're going to get to Alaska and the Dakotas soon before it gets too cold.
As a North Dakotan, you want to try to hit that usually before November.
That's exactly right. We're going to hit the road again. I was on a 22-day swing, another 6-day swing, and I'm in D.C. this week. But we're looking forward to it because here's the concern and/or the excitement. One, the investments that the president has had committed from these trade talks and from these deals is so important to the American people. $8 trillion already committed and starting to be invested. What is my role in that? I thought to myself, through the executive orders, one of the things the president asked me to do was the apprenticeship program. Every public, when we talk about the trades, they've done well with the apprenticeship program, but the private sector has somewhat not jumped on board with that as easily. I'm trying to entice the private sector to say, what do you need? When do you need them? And most of the answers are we needed them yesterday. We need that trained workforce. And a lot of that comes also through the executive order of AI. So we're talking a lot about AI, which I know we're going to discuss. We're talking a lot about the trained workforce, and we're working so well with our community colleges, our technical schools, because not everybody's going to get a 4-year degree. We are leaning into the 2-year degrees, to their certificates that they can have so that we can give just a quarter turn so that people can have the opportunity to have the jobs that they want in their communities to have mortgage paying jobs. So that's what I hear on the ground. I've been working with labor unions. I was just in Erie, Pennsylvania for the Labor Day parade. Listening to them about what they care about, and they want jobs. They always want to have the opportunity to have these jobs, and I'm going to create that. So we have 1 million active apprentices is what our goal is currently. About 700,000, give or take. We've registered 184,000 new apprentices, over 1,700 apprenticeship programs. One of the newest, International Association of Firefighters. We're seeing our law enforcement agencies because they all want that workforce in that pipeline. So that's what I'm hearing on the ground. We talk about prices. We saw gas prices down for the first time on this Labor Day since the president took office. We're seeing across the board, when I looked at what prices have come down, gas, mortgage, hotels, flights have all come down, and that matters. But we have to keep those prices down, and that's going to be when people can keep more money in their own pockets, and that's a skilled workforce.
All right, so we're at Elevate 2025. We heard kind of in the introductions, one of the big themes is just workforce challenges, right? And that pipeline kind of challenge, as well as just the shifting workforce of people leaving the workforce as they retire or move out of that industry, particularly in the construction industry. Can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned AI, the AI Workforce Research Hub within the Labor Department. What insights have you gained? Because I think sometimes people hear artificial intelligence and they think, my job's going away.
Absolutely. That's the fear tactic that a lot of the media wants you to hear and wants you to know. But that's not what's happening on the ground. We want AI is not going away. It's here to stay. It's infiltrating every part of our worlds. And we want it to be assisting the American worker. And what we're finding through our business owners is that they're using that for their systems. They're using that for any of the high technology that they can assist their American workers. I was with a company, they were a carbon fiber company, and they're showing me their production line. There's people on the production line. They're coiling carbon fiber by hand, they had been. But they've changed a little bit of that with AI and a lot of the new technology. And so they're removing those workers, and you would think, well, where are they going to go? Well, they're moving them, they're now covering the line. They are the managers of each line, and they have an expansion of more lines. Those people took a pay raise, and now they are still in the company and doing the same. It's those kind of small fixes that are working. Department of Labor, the AI Hub, as you mentioned, we're developing that. I'm working with Kelly Loeffler, the administrator for small business, Linda McMahon for Secretary of Education. We're on the AI task force. We have another meeting this afternoon with the First Lady. This is her baby because we want everyone in this country to be proficient and have literacy in AI. That's the next move, and we're going to make sure that those Make America Skilled Again grants that we are offering, $84 million we're going to do in registered apprenticeships, $30 million to go toward AI, so we can give those to our respective state partners for them to put it in their communities, because they know their market demands best for what the industry is, and we want to get those dollars out to their states so that they are well skilled in AI. And that starts off from elementary school, middle school, and on to high school, and that's where the excitement comes. They're native in AI, these young people. They understand it very well. It's not new to them, and now the government needs to get on board and understand that we have to assist them in that.
So let's talk national security, because so much of what you hear from the Trump administration is around bringing some of the manufacturing back, chips, facilities, things like that. And in order to do it, you're going to need a construction workforce, right?
Absolutely.
To be able to kind of get the administration's goals completed. How worried are you about the construction worker shortage when it comes to ensuring that the U.S. has the ability to maintain, but also to build that physical infrastructure that's going to be needed?
I think you have to talk to the stakeholders. I was just visiting yesterday with Sean McGarvey from National Building Trades. He came in to visit about jobs across the country, particularly in construction jobs. He's confident. He says, I like what the president's doing. While we might not agree on everything, he's confident that those jobs are going to come forth. We've seen 7,000 new construction jobs across the country. It's going to take time, but it's those investments, that $8 trillion that the president has already committed on the ground. I was at Micron talking about semiconductors, talking about chips. We want to bring those companies to the United States. I was on the ground to see 37 cranes on their site, 3,000 new jobs created right there, 12,000 across the country, and that's all going to take construction to build those. And we're seeing that across the nation, that investment. It's going to take some time, but it's not easy. This job isn't easy because we got to be on the ground and we have to make sure that we're leaning in. They're counting on us. They're counting on us to deliver that. We're not letting up. Those jobs will come online. I'm confident about that.
All right, we are quickly running out of time, but I have two more things I definitely want to get to. You talked about apprenticeships and how kind of that is one of the ways that you see kind of helping this workforce shortage be mitigated. Can you talk about how you spread the word on this? Like, yes, it's going into the States, but how do you make sure that younger Americans know that this is an option? There's a lot of government programs, right? And oftentimes you hear that's the challenge, right? Understanding the bureaucracy, figuring out how to actually get engaged.
Well, we have to get the word out, and that's why I'm on the ground. That's why my team's on the ground. When I talk to several businesses that have come forth, we want to make sure that our private sector businesses are recognizing that we're here for them as well. Oftentimes that dichotomy is like, we don't need the government involved, and we want them to register their apprentices with the Department of Labor. 84% of the new jobs that have come online have come from private sector, out of the 500,000 jobs that have been created since this president has taken office. We have to be talking to our communities and, again, our state partners. We want to make sure that the Department of Education is working with their state partners. They are our future workforce. Our investments in WIOA, as I mentioned, the workforce investment, that's important for Congress to get across the board. But, again, we have those grant dollars ready to go to talk to our kindergartners. I was in Portsmouth at the Naval Shipyard. 55,000 trainees and apprentices go through that program every single year. That's in all of the trades across the board. I was at Electric Boat, General Dynamics as well in Connecticut, private sector, building submarines for national security for this country, and they are training the trades where that trajectory of that growth, they now recognize that pipeline matters. So everybody is coming on board and wanting to sign up. And we're seeing those private sector companies say, Hexel just committed $1 billion. And they're saying to us they want to register now with the Department of Labor to have those apprentices. So that's the momentum. We can't lose that momentum. And I'm counting on everybody in this country to continue to talk about it. And we're putting the systems in place at the Department of Labor where we have real-time dashboards where they know where they're what's happening. They know where their apprentices are, and we're doing the same with a lot of our programming. H programs, all the visa programs, we're doing real-time dashboards to know where the money's being spent, is it modernized, is it streamlined, and are we saving the taxpayer dollars without waste, fraud, and abuse. That's the key. It takes hard work, but I put a team in place, and under my leadership, no decision at the Department of Labor will be made unless it goes through the lens of the American workforce, the American men and women who built this country, and that's what you're going to see celebrated on the 250th anniversary next year as we move through this process. It's an exciting time in America. We're carrying the president's agenda, and I couldn't be more honored, really, to carry that message for him.
I want to ask one other question. You mentioned visas and kind of workforce and dashboards. Immigration policy is obviously a big issue when it comes to the workforce and the labor industry in general. Immigrants make up 1 in 4 worker in the construction industry. What role will the newly created Office of Immigration Policy have when it comes to helping employers, many of whom are in today's audience?
Absolutely. As Congress moves through their conversations on immigration policy reform, now that the border is secure, which is exactly what the American people wanted, it's incumbent upon me to follow the law. But one of the things that we found is that sometimes the laws are not easy to understand. They're not easy to navigate. Systems in the federal government some of our systems are in the 70s and 80s. They don't talk to each other across all agencies. A couple of things. The Office of Immigration Policy, it was very important to our farmers and ranchers and producers and many others who use any of the H programs that they knew how to navigate the system. I decided to bring that office into the Secretary's office, a concierge style for the immediacy of those answers. They need it cheaper, again, faster. They need to know where their applications are. They need to know their application moving through the process. Those things need to be accessible to the people who are using the systems that we have in place, or why have them? It never makes sense to me to have something if it doesn't work. So we wanted it to work, and I directed my team to form this immigration policy to answer that question. So we have the workforce that is needed in this country to do the jobs. Agriculture, Listen, that's a national security issue. I work with Secretary Rollins all the time. Our food source matters. We have to be able to harvest when it's time to harvest. I've been to the Pacific Northwest. I'm from there in Oregon. We talk about the fisheries. I've been with the shrimpers. I have been with the lobstermen in Maine. All of it matters at the time that they need it, and we're going to make it accessible so that they know that they have the workforce that they need at the time.
Could you ever see this administration or yourself support a new temporary worker visa? Obviously, you have HB, 2B worker visas, but more of a market incentive, saying, hey, actually, we need to have a new temporary worker visa based on the market needs at this time? Or do you think it's the policy in place right now is what it should be?
Well, the policy in place is where Congress comes in. I'm not the Congresswoman anymore. I represent all Americans from the Department of Labor. My job is to give them those market stories and understand what the workforce is necessary, and then deliver that technical language. If they want to build a bill around it, I will assist them in doing so, and they will determine what those policies look like. I will enforce the law. Always, and that's what the president has asked me to do. Bring business and labor together, grow the American economy, keep prices down, keep inflation low, keep consumer confidence high, unemployment steady, and let's get to work. That's what we're here to do. The Department of Labor is here to work, and we're going to continue to do so throughout these 4 years, and we're going to deliver on those promises that the president has asked.
All right, Secretary, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate it.
Good morning.
Please.
Thank you.
Very much. Perfect. All right. Big thank you to Secretary Chavez-DeRemer. We are now going to welcome the National Institute of Building Sciences President and CEO, George Guszcza, for a fireside chat. George, welcome back to the stage.
Thanks so much.
All right, well, we covered a lot of ground here with Secretary Chavez-DeRemer, but want to first, you spoke earlier, but just in case there's anybody who is from the Punchbowl News community who's not as familiar with the National Institute of Building Sciences, you are the CEO, you've been there about a year. Give us kind of like the Cliff Notes, 100,000 feet view. What is your job? What is the Institute's job?
So the National Institute of Building Sciences was created by Congress to be an authoritative source of findings and recommendations across the built environment. They asked us to be the bridge between the private and public sectors of the economy. What we're trying to do is we're trying to advance and streamline the adaptation of science, research, technological advances so that as soon as possible, all the things that people are working on will benefit American communities across the nation.
So we spoke with the Secretary a lot about workforce shortages and the concerns that can cause as it relates to national security in particular, right? That's in terms of, she mentioned agriculture, chips. You kind of go across, you can kind of pick across all of the sectors of the U.S. economy. Talk to me a little bit about how you think about it when it comes to the built environment and construction workers.
Well, first, I think when you start thinking about America, and we always talk about American innovation, it's no wonder that when you think about the advances across the country throughout our history, it's always linked to something in the built environment, whether you're talking about the Golden Gate Bridge, where you're talking about the fact that there was a physical infrastructure that allowed the internet. When you look across and you see the massive factories and R&D institutes that pump out, the things that have really been miraculous in our lifetime, it is inextricably linked to the physical plant. Well, as we sit here, that physical plant and the infrastructure is aging. It requires more and more work to maintain. And, frankly, what we need are people to help make sure that the coming generations have that underpinning that has made America successful throughout its history.
So we're in Washington, D.C. We're at the National Building Museum, just blocks from the Capitol, where we spend certainly most of our time at Punchbowl News covering what lawmakers are thinking. What's the message, or what's the one thing you wish lawmakers were thinking about when it comes to national security and some of these workforce shortages and the challenges that you're talking about, the aging infrastructure and things like that?
I'm going to tell you a story of when we first started this event. Because, like I said, this is a little bit outside of what we normally do. But we thought it was so important, and we reached out to a Nobel laureate, and somehow she returned our call. and so I'm on a phone call, and she's a Nobel laureate in economics, have a great deal of experience around workforce, and we said, we have a problem in this country around workforce, and we talked about it. And what she said is, prove it. Do we really have a problem? I hear a lot of statistics, but so what? Maybe it's not a problem at all. Maybe there's so many people out there who want to enter, but they can't because they're not incentivized to. Maybe there's blocks. Maybe there's challenges that it could be as simple as I can't sign up for a class and therefore I can't take the next step, in order to get a certification so that then I can, start my journey to be a licensed contractor. So we had this conversation and frankly, it didn't go well for me. I felt like I was like a student again. And I didn't have the answers, and I didn't study well for the test. But we went back and we started thinking about what truly is happening. And we started looking at, the Workforce Opportunities Improvement Act. We started looking at, the various public policy incentives, like apprenticeships, that can happen at the federal, state, and local level that will help ease the burden, remove hurdles, and allow people who are truly interested in entering the workforce, enter the workforce in a meaningful way. So that's what I would ask, is relook how we remove barriers to entry, because we may not even know that the barriers exist. And many times I think we are unaware of what many folks across the nation are facing here in DC.
It's a good point. We can oftentimes get in our own little bubble, certainly in this town, of what's happening and power and conflict and things like that, and the next election. Numbers do matter, though, right? And I think you listed some in your opening remarks. I listed, a few to the secretary. But is there one or two statistics that kind of stand out to you that I think maybe highlight or showcase the challenges that you all are seeing right now?
So I think, and this is across, and this is part of the problem. When you start talking about numbers and having data-driven, evidence-based intervention policies, you need numbers that you can rely on, and the built environment is very fragmented. But here's what we know. Something simple as, for every 10,000 electricians that exit, 7,000 enter. There's going to be a 500,000, plumber shortage in the next 2 years. As we look around the country and we see in the aftermath of disasters, the rebuilding effort, we have major hotspots where the workforce issue is even worse, and construction is always local, like water. So we just because the national average may not be as high, but it is high. We have to recognize that there are areas that are in really deep trouble. And the final thing is, there's less than 11% of people entering the built environment workforce that's under the age of 24. Wow. I think if you ever look at Japan and you see the demographics of that nation, and then you start thinking, wait a minute, how is the American workforce that is driving the built environment looking like the same demographic inverted triangle of Japan?
So let's talk about that, because we heard the secretary kind of talk a lot about what she was doing on the ground, this administration and others around trying to get that pipeline maybe restarted or energized. Certainly apprenticeships is a potential pathway for more workers. How is that working today, and what more could be done?
So there is a driving need, and I think I heard you both talk about the fact that when you start asking the questions, everyone says apprenticeships are wonderful if they had started 10 years ago. There is a tail, right? And, I was talking to a colleague here from NIST, and NIST was talking about research, as they should. It takes a long time to get a researcher. It takes a long time to get someone who is experienced in the trades. It takes a long time to have an engineer, to have an architect. So when you start looking at the tail that we have to overcome in order to get meaningful participation into the built environment, yes, apprenticeships are vastly important because we will need those folks to be in the built environment 5 years from now, 10 years from now. but what about now?
Yeah, I mean, are there other incentives or programs or things? There were job corps centers I know that have been closing around the country, which has created another burden.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Job Corps. In fact, I took a little bit of a break from the architecture engineering industry, and I worked for the second largest Job Corps operator for the Department of Labor. Love the program. That is a very worthy program for this country. I think that more programs that allow folks who maybe have never considered being in the trades to enter the trades, to have that first step in, so that they're now positioned to be able to enter into an apprenticeship, because you can't just enter into an apprenticeship. There are some foundational skills and knowledge that people need that may be lacking. So we need that level of program as well. So programs like Job Corps provide that. I think the other thing that we need to really think about is the application and streamlining of the technologies that allow things to happen today. You spoke a lot about AI. We talk about robotics. Everyone who has a LinkedIn profile has something on their stream where there's like some robot dog on a construction site doing amazing things and looking really cute doing it. Wonderful. What we need to understand, though, is that means that the traditional perspective that we may have on construction workforce needs to be completely eliminated and restarted. So something that here's a stat for you. As you know, women make up more than 50% of
This is where I was going.
Right?
I love it. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, but you know what? Less than 15%, somewhere between 11 to 14% across the entirety of the built environment of women participation. It's actually one of the topics that I got tested on and failed when I was talking to the Nobel laureate. And she said, well, what if women don't want to enter? I said, I don't know. I said, well, what's keeping them from entering? Is this a cultural issue? Do women even consider entering a trade? Do we as a society consider it? Well, it's not the 1800s. No one needs to go ahead and raise a sledgehammer and slam it down all day long. We have tools for that. We have increasingly robots for that. So, all these traditional barriers to entry are now gone, are soon to be gone. But what we haven't talked about is, hey, why don't we have more women participating in a meaningful way?
I mean, these are large this is talk about a long tail of trying to really kind of restructure the aperture with which many women maybe think about entering the workforce, is what you're talking about, right? And going into these kinds of trades.
Absolutely. And I think this is where, again, as a society, as a country, we have to first look at the fact that, built environment, when we look at the built environment, we're talking about lives, livelihoods, and communities across the nation. Right? What safeguards us from the world? Our home, shelter, buildings like this allow advancement. Why wouldn't everyone want to be a part of that? Somehow, we are still living in a culture that has bifurcated the people who do and the people who don't.
All right, I want to shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about immigration. I was speaking with the secretary about it beforehand. It's obviously a hot button topic across the country. But can you talk about what the industry wants and needs as it relates to pathways for employers to retain immigrant workers through visas? I mean, we talked about H-2B visas. Is there potentially policy for Congress to think about a more market-driven approach?
Oh, gosh. Just for the record, this is way beyond what the National Institute of Building Sciences really, if you were talking about what materials would be really great and how can we improve concrete across the nation, I would be there with you.
All right.
This is a little bit outside of what I really can comment on, but what I will say is that when you start talking about workforce and you start talking about who is participating in and who is allowed to participate in, and you start looking at the many incentives, right? Because when you talk about worker visas, you're incentivizing workers to come in and participate. I say that we maybe need to have a more comprehensive view. Should we have as many incentives to participate? I think yes, and that also goes for, you know, the younger generation who are considering whether to go to college or not. Like, we need to incentivize everyone across the nation to be part of the built environment.
All right, we're going to go back to your wheelhouse. We are quickly running out of time, but I do want to end where we often end in these conversations, because I think it's important. You know, we've talked on about a bunch of different things, but if there was one thing that you want this audience, those that are streaming from the Punchbowl News audience, the staffers on the Hill, to kind of take away from our conversation this morning, what would it be?
I think there's one big issue and one big solution, right? The big issue is we don't even know the true depth and breadth of the gap that exists. We just know that it is growing and it is actually a threat to our country. That's what we know, based on all across the various trades, all across the AEC and you know, the different portions of the infrastructure community. The takeaway, though, the thing that I think is a bright light is all the advances that are right in our hands right now give us the tool set to fill that gap. We already have a solution. We have many solutions. We need to go ahead and package them and put them together and actually implement them. So yes, this is a national security issue. It's also one that can be solved. We already have the solution set. We now need to go ahead and remove barriers and incentivize the solutions being broadly accepted throughout the country.
All right, we're going to leave it there. George, thank you so much for joining me on stage. I really appreciate it. A big thank you to Secretary Chavez-DeRemer for joining us this morning on a very busy week in Washington, and to the National Institute of Building Sciences for making this conversation possible. For those who are here in person, we encourage you to please stick around for more of Elevate 2025. Have a great day and stay safe, everybody.